Alright, so this is definitely going to be a different style of video. This is going to be more of like a talking head style with very little editing. Just as a whole, you guys can definitely just put this on in the background. I'm just going to kind of ramble for a few moments about covenants and why the inability to swap covenants will ultimately be a bad thing for the game. And sure, Ian has mentioned in the past that they're probably going to try to balance the covenants like really tightly, like within 1%, I think was the number that was mentioned. But even why, I'm going to go even further beyond and try to explain an example of why that's not really feasible, unfortunately, for a large majority of the player base. Not only just like the hardcore, the top 1%, like obviously this would affect like hardcore high-end rating, but this affects everybody at the end of the day, unfortunately, and this is what I'm going to talk about. So basically, I'm just going to pull up the Salute interview on screen right now, and just to try to get a reference point, like Ian talked about covenant swapping in his interview with Salute, and this basically just boiled down to, this is a super hot topic, not just in the community but within the team. So broad thoughts are covenants are a gameplay focus, each with 3 soul vines and a covenant specific ability or legendary specific covenant abilities that come with cool mounts. It's a big system and they have a lot of tools and they feel like they can balance them. Differences exist, but how big are they going to be? If the difference is 1%, then it should be fine. Basically, he related them to racials and like how you don't really race swap all the time. Like, sure, there's some niche cases where you would race swap, but by and large, I think everybody would agree that racials are in a point where you can kind of just play where the hell you want. It'll be okay. Because they want it to be a meaningful choice, an RPG aspect of identity. They want it to be choice, and they don't want a Kyrian to be running around using Venthyr abilities. But if all else fails, they can give up and let players swap whenever you want. And it seems like swapping is going to be gated behind a very long wall, like a multi-week grindable wall, where you can't swap indefinitely. You can only swap once behind this wall. And that will be problematic for many reasons. So let's just get into it. So I'm a druid main. Say I wanted to play Restoration in Mythic Plus, and I was like a sick Resto player and really wanted to play Resto in Mythic Plus, but I was boomy for raid. The inability to be able to swap covenant abilities within a timely fashion removes my ability to be able to play Restoration or balance. Like, because basically I'm deciding, like, do I want to be a balance mythic, or do I want to be a balance raider, or do I want to be a Restoration Mythic Pluser? And that is like, it has to be 100% decided, and I'm going to be sacrificing a lot because those are 2 very distinct roles. Like, those are so very different, and the covenants that are associated with them are so also very different. Like, basically there's a covenant for Restoration. I believe it's like Necrolord. Let me just look. I believe it's Necrolord, and it will end up healing a friendly allies. Looks like it's probably going to be the go-to for Restoration, and that makes sense, right? You'd rather have something that does good amounts of HPS and good amounts of DPS for Restoration, especially in Mythic Plus. Here we go. Let's pull this up. There you go. So Adaptive Swarm. It commands a swarm that heals or deals damage to a target, increasing the effectiveness of your periodic effects upon them. Upon expiration, it travels to a new target within range, alternating between friendly and foe a set number of times. So it does damage and it does healing, and it extends HOTS. This Necrolord looks like it's going to be the premier choice for something like Restoration, for obvious reasons, for very obvious reasons. And then something like Night Fae looks like it'll be super sick for Moonkin, which is call upon the Night Fae for an eruption of energy, channeling a rapid flurry of 16 druid spells and abilities over 4 seconds. You will cast Moonfire, Wrath, Regrowth, Rejuve, Thrash, Rake, Shred, and Ironfire on appropriate nearby targets, favoring your current specialization. Sure, both of these are useful for alternative specs. Like, Night Fae can be used as Restoration, or Necrolord can be used as balance, and I'm sure it will probably do damage and it will probably do healing. Will it be balanced between 1%? Just with the sheer amount of utility between the 2 of these alone, I do not believe that. The ability to be able to apply Moonfires for balance is just astronomically large and astronomically better. The ability to be able to increase the effectiveness of your periodic effects on friendly targets is so wildly OP for Restoration that there is just like no logical way that these will be balanced. I just cannot find a world where just the uniqueness of these is going to be balanced. It's like Azerite traits. I literally look at this and I see Azerite traits written all over it. It's like whenever they created generic Azerite traits, they created them, and their statement for the generics was, we want you to have the opportunity to be able to play multiple specs if you would like and not have to reforge all the time. And it's like, okay, so you're not just going to take a generic if you want to play multiple specs. Like that's not how that works, unfortunately. The game is at a state where everything needs to be min-maxed to a level that the game has, it's to a level that the game has not seen before. Raid bots make simming super easy, so everybody sims their own character. We're no longer playing a game where people just kind of eyeball gear, unfortunately. Like basically, if you raid at all or do any level of Mythic Plus, you're simming your character. Class discords makes accessibility of information very, very readily apparent, and guides like Icy Veins and Wowhead also make information just super readily apparent. That and the general player base has gotten to a point where they're so min-maxed focused that they feel like if they're like 2 to 5% DPS behind, it's the whole world, and you're going to get an uproar almost regardless. Whether or not it even is within a few percent, you're going to get an uproar regardless. And I suspect that players are going to be persecuted against an LFG if they don't have the correct covenant, which is weird to me because I don't get this, but I've heard a lot of stories of this as being a problem where people will just get denied from groups because they don't have the correct essences on. They don't have the correct, like, their cape level's not high enough. They don't have the correct corruption for this patch. Like, if people will DM people, do you have Twilight Dev? And if the answer is no, then they get declined. Or like for raid, do you have Infinite Stars? If the answer is no, then they get declined. And you're just like, what the hell? What is wrong with these people? But it's a thing that happens in the game, and unfortunately, wanting to change these and like wanting to be able to resume RPG elements of the game is important for some degree. But I feel like the game has moved way away from just like. So some of the RPG elements that remain are really cool, like class design and class identity and whatnot. Some of them that directly affect in-game progression is really bad. The game is, whenever I think of RPG elements, I think of how Classic functions, where leveling is a distinct part of the game. Leveling is so little of a part of what current live World of Warcraft is, and I don't hate it. Like I actually prefer that for me personally, because that's just what the game has become. It's way more of an MMO. It's way more multiplayer focused. And it has like a lot of cool elements. It has a lot of cool PvP elements. It has a lot of like War Mode is sick. Mythic Plus is sick. Torghast is dope. Raid is also like, all the raid encounters have been fucking awesome. But then whenever you just restrict people and like say, okay, so you can be good at raid, but you're probably going to be subpar, let's say 90 to 95% at Torghast and Mythic Plus and PvP and World PvP and all these other things that you enjoy doing. You just strip away the fun, unfortunately. And sure, they want there to be meaningful choice, but like the meaningful choice should come right before you do that act. Like gear locking in Mythic Plus is a good example of that. And like talent locking in Mythic Plus, you have to make a meaningful choice right before the dungeon starts of what gear you're wearing, what essences you're wearing, what Azerite you're wearing, and like what talents you're wearing as well. You have to make those meaningful choices right before the encounter starts. In Raid, in Mythic Plus, like right before the dungeon starts, you have to make all of those choices then. You don't have to make those choices 2 weeks in advance where you're like writing it in about, oh, which covenant should I pick for progression? Or, oh, which covenant should I pick for Mythic Plus? Hey, you want to do keys and push week in 2 weeks? Oh yeah, dude, let me start this grind to get my covenant swapped because we have just recently killed a boss that I no longer need this covenant for. And that right there is why it's a problem. And I'm done rambling. I'm thoroughly upset, and I hope this gets changed. I hope you guys all have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you guys later. Goodbye.